Hello, and welcome to this presentation on how we're helping some of our retail customers optimize their pricing strategy using EDA approaches. So first of all, thank you so much to the EDA Summit organization for allowing us to present this case to everyone who's attending the event, and also to share this experience with the community. So my name is José Rodrigues. I had a few of the service portfolios at Link Consulting, specialized in integration, specialized in distributed architectures, or if you want, cloud native architectures, and also chatbots and innovative channels. I'm also a keen speaker at tech events. I'm a cloud solution architect. You can find some of my contacts here. You're free to DM me, just reach out if you have any questions, if you want to share your own experience. I'm always keen to have a bit of a chat and discussion on these subjects. So first, and before we start with the actual case, I would like to give a public shout to the team that was involved, our team in this project. So Diogo, Patricia, Manuel, thank you so much for your effort in this. And I think that we reached out a very good solution for the customer, and the customer is also very pleased with the end result. So first, a bit of a context. Prio is one of the Portuguese top energy retailers. So they specialize in fuel retail, gas retail. They're also one of the biggest electric mobility service providers. So they supply energy to electric cars, and they've been operating in the Portuguese market. They're having steady growth, and they have recently been acquired by Grupo Disa, which is a big energy group from Spain. And as with any merger or acquisition, this typically leads to two different IT landscapes having to be combined, if not in an immediate sense during time. And this project is also part of this movement of combining strategies to reach more value and better serve their own customers. So I'm pretty sure that we'll be also reaching out into some of the challenges that this acquisition brought to this specific project. So just stick around and we'll get on to those specific challenges in a moment. So Prio has more than 250 stores. So they focus on retail, fuel retail, and of course also non-oil products, as you'll find in any station, like food, newspapers, and so on. And of course, to increase their competitiveness, they want to have what they call dynamic pricing strategies. So they're not really keen on just like setting a price and having it set for a very long time. They're always observing what is going on in the market, and they're doing it on a per cluster or per station basis. So what they want is to react in terms of pricing, to adapt their prices to be more competitive depending on what is happening in the market in that specific moment. So typically in retail, prices are set in the ERP. They're then placed in files which are sent over to the point of sale server. So this is typically done on a daily basis. Depending on the retails, this can change a bit, but that's how prices are set, and then they reach each one of the stores. So there's a point of sale server in each of the locations, in each of the stores, or in this case, in each of the stations. So, but Prio had a bit of a different approach. So they agreed with their point of sale vendor that they wanted to do something different, and they created a set of web services on SAP, which allows the point of sale server to communicate directly with the SAP server and request updated product catalog information, updated pricing. So there's a bit of a chat between each of the point of sale servers and the SAP ERP. So they start by requesting if there's any kind of updates for them to process. Of course, the SAP server just replies yes or no. Of course, if there is no, there is not much more conversation going on. But if the reply is yes, you get an indication of what needs to be queried in more detail to get that updated information. So the point of sale server starts querying the SAP server about if they have like specific products, new products for oil or non-oil, if there's any change in the description of the products, if there are new products, if there are products that are discontinued. And so this goes back and forth, and then it goes into the pricing aspect. So it requests new pricing if there are new prices on the existing or even in new products. So there's a bit of a chat between the point of sale server and the SAP server. The thing is, well, in the end, after this process, there's always an acknowledge back from the point of sale server to the SAP server, so that the SAP server knows that that specific point of sale has the updated prices, it has the updated product catalog. So, but this happens on a per station, per store basis. And this poses an additional challenge because as we want dynamics, we want to do this frequently, and it's being done frequently. So every 5 minutes, there's this conversation between each of the point of sale servers and the SAP server. Now, as you can quickly understand, this leads to a lot of requests during the day, and most of the stations, they also operate on a 24/7. So it's constantly going on every day, all day, and this results in a significant amount of calls from the point of sale servers to the SAP servers. So it's a big load over the SAP servers. With the acquisition from DISA, there's now a second SAP server, which also needs to interact and communicate with the point of sale servers, but actually they're doing it through a file, pretty much as we mentioned before, that it's typical retail strategy. So now you also need to take this into account, and the frequency is different. So you see that these two worlds, as we mentioned before, these two worlds have to combine and have to work together. To add to all of this, the SAP server from Prio is running on the cloud. So if you think of it, having this server on the cloud, it can bring additional challenges and it can bring additional costs, because every time you need to go and query that information, there are egress costs involved. So Prio has been in the cloud for many years now. They've adopted the multi-cloud strategy. They're operating over AWS, over Azure, over Oracle Cloud, over a Portuguese provider also. So there's always a lot of communication going back and forth between all of these clouds, and because they're using like the request reply pattern, it's pretty much point to point. So every time there's an information that I need for my specific system, I have to request this information to a system that probably is running on the cloud. And to get that information back, we always get these egress costs. It doesn't matter if additional systems would need that specific information, but as this is point to point, all of that information is coming to me and not being shared amongst anyone else. So this typically follows this pattern in which all of the information is siloed. There's a gatekeeper, and if you're running in cloud, the gatekeeper is typically paid in egress costs. So this is something that we also want to change, because we think that data should be free. So if the data is stuck away in a silo, it doesn't flow anywhere, and it greatly reduces the value that it produces to the organization. So what we want to do with an EDA approach is also to pick up this data, have it flowing between systems, so that everyone can use it and not being forced to actually go and request that information somewhere, because it adds hurdles. I mean, you can request, a lot of things to your boss, to your wife, let's call it like this, if you want to, and you know that you're going to get a positive response on that request. But the fact that you always need to request, and it's not an easy, non-obstacled way to get the information. So what we really want to do is to free our data and to make it available to each one of the systems that may need it. Maybe not now, but maybe in the future. So using an EDA approach on this is what we believe the best way to achieve these goals. So we started with a consultancy project. We developed a few integrations for Prio, and then when we started understanding the data flow inside the organization, we started to ask a few questions. So we already know that dynamic pricing takes a toll on the SAP, and that the acquisition from DISA also brought additional challenges. So what we really need is to decrease the impact that all of this brings into one or two or three specific systems, in this case over SAP, and we need to somehow decouple the POS need for information from the SAP. So we need to change this paradigm from asking for information to just knowing that the information is there, it exists, and I can just access it without having to ask for it. So these, I think, are the main points that we somehow put inside this project to guide us through it. So in terms of the solution, what we did was, so we get our SAP, of course. Sorry. We got our SAP server, and we got our points of sale servers. We built a pricing microservice that can scale independently, and it will act as a bumper of requests and load over the SAP server. So typically what we do is we mimic the SAP interface to the POS server. They do the communication as they used to do. They don't change absolutely anything. So this also brings a reduced impact in all of this process. So they just request that information, and this is done, of course, as always, on a per station, per store basis. What the pricing microservice is doing is also getting the updated information from the SAP server, because, of course, the pricing is still set on the SAP server. But we're just collecting this information in a single call. We're just getting all of the information, and then we'll collect that information, and we'll use it to serve each one of the points of sale servers. So I think it's easy to understand that this can bring an additional performance enhancement, as it reduces the amount of calls to the SAP server itself by 250. You just do it once, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. So now you just have 250. You're reducing 250 times the number of calls. The POS servers still call every 5 minutes, but they're just calling the microservice pricing, and the microservice pricing is still calling every 5 minutes the SAP server, but it's just doing one specific call. And of course, you still get this reality from the second SAP server, which is also considered in the solution, but it just goes on towards the pricing microservice, and not and it then deals with everything that it needs to do in terms of updating of product catalog and updating of prices, and it just uses the same interface as the Prio SAP server, so that the POS servers can just communicate with it directly. So this is also producing events. So with the introduction of this microservice, we're just producing new events that weren't there in the first place. So this is the first step towards making data freely available and constantly flowing inside the IT landscape. So these new events, they're generated, they're placed in the event broker, and this is, as we mentioned before, the first step towards freeing your data for all of your systems. So it no longer is stuck somewhere inside a given system, inside a given cloud. It's now readily available to be consumed by anyone, any other system, any other cloud, without you having to go and have these egress costs associated with it. Of course, this is always done using security profiles. So if a system doesn't have the right to access that information, it won't. But if it does, it no longer has to request it. So in terms of the phase 2 of this project, what we'll be doing is we're gonna change the paradigm. So we're gonna go from being a polling effort over the SAP to go full event generation from SAP. Then it will then use those events to populate any system, including the POS server. So the Prio SAP just generates an event using the REST API on the event broker. Of course, if we're going for the SAP server from DISA, it still maintains the same approach, but the pricing microservice is doing pretty much the same as the SAP from Prio is doing, which is generating the events. So every single event goes into the event broker, and it then is propagated to the POS server. And this is propagated using a very cool feature from the Solus event broker, which allows us to transform events into REST calls using the REST delivery point. So basically, when there's an event in a specific queue that is associated with the REST delivery point, each message that gets into that REST delivery point is transformed into a REST call that then invokes a REST endpoint on the consumer side. So this also allows us to save implementation effort on the POS server side, because they already have a set of REST endpoints and will just use them. So with this, you now have real-time data, real-time pricing updates, real-time catalog updates directly from the SAP server to the points of sale server and any other system that may be interested in these events, which I think it's a big plus. It accelerates and it fully fulfills this idea of dynamic pricing up to real-time status. So in terms of architecture, so this is currently being implemented, and I think it's a breakthrough on how retail can respond to market conditions much faster than it does now. In terms of events and the way that we use those events and consume those events, we also posed quite some effort on defining the event taxonomy, so that we can use some of the features that event brokers allow us to use. And in this case, for instance, Solus uses these wildcard patterns so that we can focus what we want to consume. And if you take the way that things are defined, so events are defined, and the way that they're published, we can easily state what we want to consume, what is interesting to me, without me having to worry about to do fine-grained subscription and then do some post-processing and say, well, I don't need this information. This way, you always get information that you're really interested in, and you don't have to discard anything. So this greatly saves network bandwidth. This greatly saves system load and process of these events that you don't actually need. And this also shaves down operations and development times, because you don't need to do all this fine-graining, fine-tuning in every single development that you do. You just take advantage of what these features offer you. So you also gain one very important thing, which is, as I mentioned before, because you're publishing events, you have the possibility to do publish once, consume many, and if you use this approach, you only have egress costs once, the first time that that specific information leaves the cloud of the system in which it's running. But because from then on, this information is widespread throughout your organization, and you can just consume it, of course, if you have these permissions. So the information is now free to be used by any other system. So in terms of major benefits that we're achieving with this project, of course you get all of this reduced load over SAP. You get this real-time price and product catalog updates. So you no longer need to do polling. You just have this event published, and it immediately the point of sale server gets that updated information. And so this adds business agility, and the business is now able to respond immediately to market conditions. So if there is one competitor that is offering like a special promotion, and you can actually respond to this and do it in an immediate way. You also reduce a lot of the network traffic. So, and this directly translates to reducing your cloud running costs. So this is also very important. And of course, you also had this increased reliability, because you start to decouple the POS from the SAP. So it no longer needs everything to be perfect, or otherwise you would have impacts. It's just focused on getting the information when it's available as soon as possible, and then it breaks the coupling that was there before because of the of the synchronous integration. So this is what I wanted to show you. As I mentioned before, please just reach out, DM me if you want, and I'll be happy to get into more details on how we implemented this, or just discuss any other questions that you may have around event-driven architectures, cloud solutions. So all of these sort of things, I'm always keen to discuss them. So thank you so much for attending, and bye-bye.